here we are, it's all dry. Isn't this a gorgeous shot? This lens is awesome. This is a used lens. You can get these, I think I got this for 95 bucks on eBay in excellent condition. If you got one that was kind of beat up, you could probably get it for 50 bucks, but it's the Micro Nikkor f2.8 55 millimeter Micro Nikkor. So it's a macro lens. Really, just my favorite lens. I always use this lens whenever I can. It just has a pretty narrow width, so I can only use it so much. Anyway, here's the thing, and it turned out great. It's just maybe a little thicker than I'd want. Friction right here, there's a little bit of a speed bump right there. So while it's in this state, it's pretty much like wood. So you can, you know, scrape it, carve it, sand it. And what I'm going to do is make this transition here as smooth as possible and more tapered. And then right back here, I mean, this is it turned out pretty smooth. I pounded it once or twice, but as long as I'm not sanding through any stitches, I can hit that with a little bit of sandpaper. So I think we're gonna do that. Just take off, you know, a few of these high points. Oh yeah, that's better already. Again, just want to be careful with those stitches. That's one problem, is there's a stitch exposed right here, so I can only take that down so far. I have to work on making that a little better next time. And let's see. Well, let's get you guys a little bit closer. Yeah, so as you can see, it's just like wood. In fact, it's easier than wood because it doesn't have any grain to it. The grain is homogeneous, right? I mean, it has some grain technically, but for our purposes, it really doesn't have anything that's going to catch the knife and pull the knife in a certain direction and tear out shreds like wood would. Like wood would. So if you got a good sharp knife, you can do a lot. So I think I'm going to go around and do that and just really try to smooth this off, and then I'll sand that transition right there. There's something a little finer here. Just some real fine sandpaper on the back here. Feels good. There's a little bump here that I don't like, but I know there's a thread there, so I don't want to mess with it anymore. There's a little gap right here, but I actually might be able to jump the head on further. Anyway, not a big deal. None of it's a big deal. It all looks really good. And I'll just use this a bunch and see how it goes for me. I don't think I would want it any thicker than this, but obviously to an extent, the thicker it is, the more protective it is, and I think this will be just fine. I'll probably get used to it and not really notice it, but we'll find out. Okay, the only other thing I'm going to do is get back to oiling this handle, which I had been working on for a while. And I'm going to go ahead and oil this because that's kind of part of the experiment too for me, is to see in the long run how linseed oil affects the rawhide. And someone left a comment on the first video in this series that they linseed oil their rawhide protected handle that they've been using for a long time, and it has, you know, held up really well. So far the hatchet I did seems fine too. And I probably linseed oiled other rawhide wraps like this, but it's just been a really long time since I made one. And most of my handles I don't actually put anything on, but I think it's a good idea. So I just want to tie up this video series with a little bit of discussion, kind of go back over some of the points of like the functions of braces and wraps, and also what I do and don't like and why, and comparing some of the different options, I guess. To reiterate again, the functions of these are abrasion resistance, compression, shock absorption. Now, I can't really emphasize enough how important it is to me to have this be fairly invisible to my hand and not be intrusive. Now, that means two things. I don't want a lot of extra thickness so that there's a major speed bump as I'm sliding my hand up and down. And I don't want very much texture. I want the texture to be similar to the handle, so I don't have to be thinking about that or changing the way that I'm gripping or how hard I'm gripping, or like letting up more to slide off of this part because it has more grip and then onto this part, which I then have to, you know what I'm saying? I just want it to be fairly invisible. I don't want anything there, basically. I mean, that would be ideal if there was nothing there and it's just the handle and I'm just chopping happily away. So you could call that tactile invisibility or something like that. Now, one of the reasons that's important to me is because I handle the axe here a lot. I handle it when I'm just handling the axe, say if I'm limbing or moving around or something like that. But also every time I take a swing, like if I'm splitting, I'm chopping, I'm limbing, felling, whatever I'm doing, I go up here, I grab this, I handle the axe here, I get ready, I slide down, I make my cut, I slide back, just over and over and over and over. So I don't want anything interfering with that action. Now, I haven't used paracord wraps, but to me they seem like about the worst case scenario. They add a lot of thickness and they also have a lot of grip and texture, and people will mention that a lot, that they add grip and that's a good thing. Again, I see that as a bad thing. I can't think of anything that I do with an axe that this texture right here, or just like regular wood with oil on it, cured, linseed oil, isn't just great. I think if you surveyed people who do a lot of carving, like hatchet carving and stuff like that, I think you'd find very few of them add anything here for extra texture for that. And again, I just can't think of any reason I would need that, and it's just a hindrance to me when I'm chopping and handling the axe. Same goes for splitting mauls, because they're especially heavy, so you really need to either just be dragging them, holding them straight up like this and dangling, or right here at the head where you can handle them and maneuver them easily. As far as other options go, I think a lot of things can serve those purposes of compression, shock absorption, and abrasion resistance, but they may have other, negative traits. So I've already went over paracord. Metal, it's not something you could do at home and make something so form-fitting and perfect that it's not going to possibly cut you, because of course, sheet metal could end up being sharp. Or, it could also get, even if it did fit well, it could get damaged and then you could cut yourself when you're sliding up and down. It's also cold. So this is going to be about the same temperature and hardness as wood. If anything, it'll be a little bit warmer. Thinner cord wraps, I've seen someone on YouTube. I actually tried to look for this video just because I like to give credit where credit's due, and I couldn't find it, but they were using fine seine twine, which is a very thin nylon cord used to make nets, and wrapping that really tight and really close, and then super gluing that down. And I'm sure that's very effective. It doesn't add thickness, so that's good. It seems like the texture could annoy me slightly, but I've never tried it. Leather, you could make it work pretty good, but it's never going to perform like rawhide. I mean, it's not going to have the same compression and form fitting. A lot of the time it's going to be thicker. If it's not going to be nearly as tough or protective or compressive or strength as strong just in general. It might serve better as shock absorption, so could paracord. I think that's one place that rawhide might be lacking a little bit. But I think if you went over all the options, especially natural options that you could do, I just don't think you're going to beat rawhide. I mean, the stuff's amazing. It's incredibly tough. It's super compressive. It forms like to every nook and cranny and shape of the wood, and it looks great on top of it. So aside from getting it soaking wet and then damaging it while it's soaking wet, which just doesn't seem very likely, I think we're pretty good. And if you oil it well, then I don't think that's going to be a problem. Tim at Oxbow Farms, I think he saw one of my rawhide handle guards, and he took a squirrel and skinned it as a tube and slid it on and made a thing out of that, which shrunk down fine, but I think it was too thin. He said it was wearing away. But he had the idea of using a deer leg and skinning that, like the lower leg of the deer, and then slipping that on as a tube. And I think that's probably going to work really great if it fits. And that's cool because you don't have to sew it. And the skin on the lower leg of a deer is very thin, actually, but it's also very dense. So it has a very fine fiber structure. Skin varies a lot. Like the skin from the neck of a deer is going to be very coarse and have large, big, coarse felt-like fibers. But down on the lower legs is extremely fine, tightly packed, dense fibers. And it can be brittle. Like rawhide can be brittle if it's very thin, so I could see that tearing like if you hit like a sharp edge of wood or something. But the cool thing is you could just slice that off, and if you had, you know, saved your deer legs dried or in the freezer or whatever, then you could just slip another one on and let it dry because you don't have to do any sewing. So I think Tim's onto something there. Check him out. It's Oxbow Farms YouTube channel. He's been upping his production, putting out more videos because people are watching. You know, people have come over from my channel to see him do his Cordwood Challenge stuff. He's an interesting guy. He's really smart. He's got a lot of stuff to say. He's a good axeman, and that's always good. If you're interested in axe work, you should be watching people that are, you know, decent at chopping. So it's good to just watch him chop. You know, show the guy some love. It's pretty hard to put out, you know, take the time to shoot videos, edit them, get them posted, and get like 10 to 50 views. It's pretty discouraging. And I think that's about it. I'm going to leave you with one last thing, which is I'm starting a video series that is going to cover 5 things that you need for effective axe work. Now, these are 5 things that are kind of interrelated, but they sort of come together under one roof or umbrella. And I'll give you one hint. Safety is not one of them. These are more like conceptual and physical things that you need to pull off effective axe work, let's say. So I came up with an acronym for that. It's STATE, S-T-A-T-E, as in like what's the state of your axemanship, and give me some guesses as to what those 5 things are. And who knows, maybe you'll think of something that I forgot, but I think this is a pretty comprehensive, good list, and that if you took any one of these things away, you know, you're gonna not be effective at all, but your effectiveness is going to suffer to some extent. So let me know what you think those are, and I'll be starting that series soon, and it's going to be one video for each of those 5 things. And I could expand that whole concept, and a lot of each of those things could be expanded into multiple videos. But this is going to be a way that I can get this information out pretty quick, because people are starting the Cordwood Challenge, and I want everyone to be thinking about these 5 things and thinking about bringing them together, because I think it could really accelerate the rate of learning and effectiveness pretty fast. So let me know what you think those are, and I'll see you next Axe Wednesday, I guess, or sometime. Timber! If the log's big, you can make 2 or 3 cuts, like one in the middle, one down here, and one up here. when you make the top cuts here, because it's a lot more dangerous, because you know you could miss and come through, aim your axe downward a little bit like this. See?